Kindness. It's the one word we often associate with humanity's best qualities, the universal virtue celebrated in every corner of the world. We're taught from a young age that kindness is a key to happiness, the foundation of strong relationships, and a reflection of moral strength. The Buddha taught compassion as the cornerstone of enlightenment. Zen masters have described kindness as the ripple in a pond that creates harmony far beyond the initial act. Across cultures and philosophies, it is revered, elevated, and encouraged. You've probably heard it countless times: be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle you cannot see. It's a beautiful sentiment. And yet, beneath this wisdom lies a paradox that few are willing to talk about. Have you ever felt, after an act of kindness, a quiet sting of regret? Perhaps someone brushed off your goodwill, dismissed your intentions, or worse, exploited your generosity. Have you ever gone out of your way to help someone only to be met with indifference, entitlement, or even disrespect? It's a troubling reality, isn't it? The very kindness that is supposed to bring people closer together can sometimes drive misunderstanding. Those who are consistently kind are often mistaken for weak. Their generosity, instead of inspiring gratitude, invites exploitation. It can feel deeply unfair. But this isn't a modern problem, nor is it unique to your experiences. This paradox has persisted through time. Even the Buddha, despite his infinite compassion and wisdom, faced scorn and ridicule from those who misunderstood his teachings. And Zen masters, known for their balance of insight and action, have long taught that kindness without wisdom is like a flame without fuel, beautiful for a moment but ultimately unsustainable. So, why does this happen? How does a virtue as noble as kindness become a source of pain or misunderstanding? The answer lies not in the kindness itself but in its application. Kindness, when offered without discernment, can create imbalance. Without boundaries, it becomes a vulnerability rather than a strength. In this video, we'll unravel this paradox, exploring the intricate relationship between kindness, wisdom, and self-respect. Drawing from the timeless teachings of Buddhism and Zen philosophy, we'll uncover why kindness alone isn't enough and how it must be paired with awareness and discernment. But this isn't just about abstract philosophy. This journey is deeply practical, full of lessons that you can apply to your life today. Along the way, you'll hear the story of a young disciple whose boundless kindness turned into his greatest struggle. His journey, marked by confusion, exploitation, and ultimately, transformation, offers powerful insights into how we can navigate the complexities of kindness in our own lives. So, if you've ever wondered why your acts of kindness sometimes feel unrewarded, or even worse, met with negativity, you're not alone. Stay with us as we explore how to transform your kindness into a true strength that uplifts not only others but yourself as well. Let's begin with the story of a young disciple who learned this lesson the hard way. In the tranquil stillness of the monastery, surrounded by majestic peaks and the whisper of cool mountain winds, there lived a young disciple who believed kindness was the highest virtue. Every day, he poured his heart into serving others. If a fellow disciple struggled with their chores, he stepped in without hesitation. When food was scarce, he offered his share to the hungry. No matter how unreasonable the request, he would oblige, seeing each act as a reflection of his commitment to the teachings of compassion. At first, his efforts shone brightly. Other disciples marveled at his generosity and praised his unyielding willingness to help. Their words filled him with a quiet pride, a sense of purpose that assured him he was walking the path of true compassion. He carried the glow of their admiration like a lantern in his heart, believing it was the light of enlightenment guiding him forward. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the warmth began to fade. The disciples who once praised his actions now barely noticed them. What had once been a source of admiration turned into expectation. People started to assume he would always step in. Always say yes. Always shoulder the burdens that weren't his to carry. Some left their tasks undone entirely, confident he would finish them without complaint. Others spoke to him in curt tones, knowing he wouldn't retaliate. He tried to ignore the growing weight of the shift. Kindness, he thought, wasn't about being recognized or appreciated. It was about giving selflessly. Yet, despite his convictions, an ache began to settle in his chest. The very acts that had once brought him joy now left him feeling hollow. Each request he fulfilled drained a little more of his spirit. Each harsh word chipped away at his resolve. One evening, when the sun dipped low and bathed the monastery in soft golden light, the disciple found himself standing before the wise master. The man's presence was steady and calm, like the roots of an ancient tree. The disciple bowed low, his voice trembling as he spoke. "Master," he said, "why does my kindness bring me disrespect? Am I not living according to the teachings of compassion?" The master regarded him with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of countless lifetimes. After a moment of silence, he smiled gently. "Come," he said, gesturing for the disciple to sit. "Let me tell you a story." The master's voice was soft, yet it carried a weight that commanded attention. "There was once a river," he began, "that flowed through a dense forest. This river was generous, offering its clear, cool water to all who needed it. The animals drank from it to quench their thirst. The trees along its banks grew tall and strong, their roots reaching deep into its bed. Travelers paused to rest by its side, drawing water to refresh themselves before continuing their journey. The river never turned anyone away." The disciple leaned forward, drawn into the story. For a time, the master continued. The forest thrived because of the river's generosity. But over the years, things began to change. The animals, without care, started to muddy the waters. Travelers left their waste behind, polluting the river's pristine flow. And the trees, growing ever larger, extended their roots deeper into the river, drawing more water than they needed. The river, once abundant, began to dwindle. Its once clear waters turned murky and its flow weakened. The master paused, letting the image settle in the disciple's mind. Finally, he said, "The river spoke to the forest. Why do you treat me this way?" it asked. "I have given you life, yet you exploit my kindness." "What did the forest say?" the disciple asked quietly. The master's expression softened. "Because you do not set boundaries," the forest replied. "We assumed you didn't mind." The disciple's eyes widened as the weight of the words sank in. "What should the river have done?" "Master," he asked. The master leaned forward slightly, his tone firm but kind. "The river," he said, "must learn that kindness without wisdom is like an overflowing cup. It spills everywhere, wasting what could have been shared with intention. True kindness knows when to give and when to hold back, not out of selfishness, but to preserve harmony. Only then can it sustain itself." The disciple sat in silence, the story replaying in his mind. He saw himself in the river, his boundless giving, his unchecked compassion, and the toll it had taken. His acts of kindness, though genuine, lacked balance. He had given and given, never considering the need to replenish his own spirit, never setting boundaries to guide the flow of his generosity. The master continued, his voice steady. "Compassion is not a weakness, but it becomes one when it is offered indiscriminately, without discernment. Kindness can be misunderstood or exploited. People will take what they need, not out of malice, but because they do not see the limits you yourself refuse to set. The disciple looked up, his heart heavy with realization. "But Master," he said, "is it not selfish to withhold kindness?" The Master shook his head gently. To withhold is not selfish if it is done with wisdom. To say no when needed is not cruelty, it is respect. Respect for yourself, for others, and for the delicate balance of life. Remember, true kindness uplifts both the giver and the receiver. If your kindness leaves you depleted and others dependent, it is no longer compassion, it is imbalance. The disciple bowed his head, a quiet determination settling within him. He understood now that kindness, like the river's flow, needed direction. It was not enough to give endlessly. To truly embody the teachings of compassion, he would need to pair his generosity with wisdom, to set boundaries not as barriers, but as guides for harmonious giving. That evening, as he left the Master's chamber, the disciple felt lighter. The weight of his confusion had been lifted, replaced by a new understanding. Kindness, he realized, was not about losing oneself in service to others. It was about finding a balance where both his spirit and the world around him could thrive. The story of the river and the forest speaks to an enduring truth about human relationships and the nature of giving. The river, in its purest form, was a source of life and vitality for everything around it. Yet, its inability to set limits transformed its generosity into depletion, and its gift became a resource others took for granted. The Master's tale echoes the realities of kindness in our own lives. When kindness is given without discernment, it can become unbalanced, misunderstood, and even exploited. To fully grasp the lessons of this parable, we must delve deeper into three essential principles that underpin kindness in its interaction with wisdom. The nature of people is complex. As the Master hinted with his gentle wisdom, human behavior is often shaped by perception rather than intention. A person's response to kindness is rarely about the act itself, but rather about how they interpret it. Some view kindness as a profound virtue, a gift to be cherished. For these people, your kindness becomes a spark that lights gratitude, creating a bond of mutual respect and understanding. But others, whether knowingly or unknowingly, see kindness through a different lens. They may perceive it as a sign of weakness, an indication that the giver lacks strength or confidence to assert their own needs. This doesn't mean kindness is inherently flawed, rather, it reveals the diversity of human interpretation. When kindness is given without boundaries or mindfulness, it risks sending unintended messages. The disciple, much like the river in the story, poured out his energy with the assumption that his generosity would always be met with appreciation. But appreciation, as the Master subtly pointed out, is not guaranteed. True kindness requires discernment, a keen awareness of when to give and when to step back. It's about understanding the needs of others without losing sight of your own, ensuring that your actions uplift not just the recipient but also yourself. Kindness is deeply connected to the balance of Yin and Yang, the ancient forces of harmony in Zen philosophy. Yin, the nurturing, soft, and receptive energy, is the essence of kindness. It embodies gentleness, compassion, and the willingness to give. Yet, Yin cannot thrive on its own. Without Yang, the counterpart force of strength, firmness, and direction, Yin becomes vulnerable, even self-destructive. The disciple's story is a reflection of this imbalance. His acts of kindness, though abundant, lacked the firmness of Yang, leaving him vulnerable to exploitation. The beauty of Yin and Yang lies in their interdependence. Just as the river needs banks to guide its flow, kindness needs boundaries to give it structure and purpose. Firmness does not diminish kindness, instead, it protects it, ensuring that its nurturing energy remains sustainable. Achieving this balance requires mindfulness, a practice of staying present and aware of your own needs and the dynamics of those around you. When kindness is rooted in this balance, it becomes a powerful force, gentle yet unshakable, compassionate yet discerning. Boundaries, as the Master explained, are not walls meant to shut others out. They are bridges to mutual respect, guiding interactions in a way that honors both the giver and the receiver. The forest in the parable exploited the river not out of malice but because the river failed to signal its limits. Similarly, people often overstep when boundaries are not clearly communicated. Boundaries teach others how to treat us. They signal that kindness is a choice, not an obligation. Without them, kindness can become an unsustainable cycle of giving that leaves the giver depleted and the receiver unfulfilled. The disciple's struggle illustrates the power of boundaries in action. By learning to say no when necessary, he didn't abandon his kindness. He refined it. He discovered that declining unreasonable requests was not an act of cruelty but one of respect for himself and for the balance of the relationship. This shift allowed his kindness to flow with purpose, restoring its value and impact. Imagine a river that runs endlessly without replenishment. Over time, it runs dry. Its once clear waters reduce to a trickle. But a river that flows within its boundaries, guided by natural rhythms, remains vibrant and abundant, nurturing all who come to its shores. Kindness operates in much the same way. Boundaries ensure that your giving remains sustainable, that it feeds your spirit rather than depletes it. In the context of modern life, these lessons hold profound relevance. Consider the diligent employee who always says yes to extra tasks, believing their willingness will earn them respect and admiration. At first, their efforts are appreciated, even celebrated. But over time, their colleagues begin to expect this behavior, taking it for granted. The employee's kindness becomes a double-edged sword, leading to burnout and resentment. Without boundaries, their acts of generosity become a source of personal imbalance. Or think of a parent who never says no to their child's demands, equating love with unending acquiescence. While this may foster a temporary sense of harmony, it ultimately creates entitlement, eroding the mutual respect that underpins a healthy relationship. The parent's kindness, unchecked by boundaries, becomes unsustainable, leaving both the parent and child unfulfilled. These examples underscore the importance of integrating boundaries into acts of kindness. Setting limits is not about withholding compassion, it's about ensuring that your generosity remains authentic and meaningful. When kindness flows from a place of strength and balance, it inspires respect and fosters deeper connections. The Master's teachings on these principles are not meant to diminish the value of kindness but to enhance it. Kindness, when paired with wisdom, becomes a transformative force. It uplifts both the giver and the receiver, creating a harmony that sustains itself over time. By understanding the nature of people, embracing the balance of Yin and Yang, and cultivating the power of boundaries, we can navigate the complexities of kindness with grace and purpose. The disciple's journey serves as a timeless reminder of these truths. His initial struggles were not failures but opportunities for growth, moments that deepened his understanding of what it means to truly embody compassion. Through the Master's guidance, he learned that kindness is not diminished by setting limits. It is strengthened by them. This realization allowed him to rediscover the joy of giving, no longer weighed down by resentment or exhaustion but energized by a sense of balance and clarity. As we reflect on these lessons, it becomes clear that kindness, when practiced with mindfulness, is not merely an act of generosity. It is a reflection of inner harmony, a testament to the strength that lies in knowing when to give and when to withhold. In this balance, kindness becomes more than a virtue, it becomes a source of empowerment, a gift that nourishes both the heart of the giver and the world around them. The principles of kindness, discernment, and balance are not confined to ancient stories or philosophical teachings. They manifest in the world around us, woven into the fabric of everyday interactions. The story of the river and the forest echoes through the lives of countless individuals, illustrating how unchecked generosity, without the guidance of wisdom, can lead to unintended consequences. Consider the diligent employee. Driven by a desire to be helpful and appreciated, they take on every task that comes their way, even when it stretches them beyond their limits. At first, their willingness earns them admiration. Colleagues commend their dedication. Managers highlight them as a team player, and their contributions are celebrated. Yet, over time, something begins to shift. The extra tasks, initially seen as an occasional favor, become an expectation. The praise grows less frequent, replaced by the assumption that this employee will always step in to pick up the slack. Their evenings are consumed by work. Personal time dwindles, and the initial satisfaction of being helpful turns into a gnawing sense of exhaustion. Resentment begins to creep in, directed not only at their colleagues but also at themselves for allowing the situation to persist. The employee's kindness, once a source of connection and pride, has become a source of imbalance, leaving them depleted and undervalued. The absence of boundaries allowed their generosity to be misconstrued as an obligation, and in doing so, it lost its power to inspire respect. Now picture a parent who, out of love and a desire to nurture, rarely says no to their child. Every request is met with a yes, whether it's staying up late, skipping chores, or receiving yet another new toy. The parent believes this boundless generosity fosters a strong bond and a sense of security for their child. For a time, it does. The child feels loved and cared for, and the parent takes comfort in their child's happiness. But as the years pass, this pattern begins to show cracks. The child, accustomed to never hearing no, starts to expect their wishes to be fulfilled without question. The parent's kindness, intended as an expression of love, is taken for granted. When the parent eventually tries to enforce boundaries, perhaps saying no to an unreasonable demand, the child reacts with anger or disbelief. The dynamic shifts, and the once loving bond becomes strained by entitlement and frustration. The absence of limits, meant to nurture, instead creates an imbalance that leaves both the parent and child struggling to recalibrate their relationship. These scenarios are familiar because they reflect a universal truth: kindness, when offered without boundaries, can lose its intended meaning. The employee's willingness to help was never meant to make them a perpetual workhorse, just as the parent's generosity was never meant to foster entitlement. In both cases, the absence of discernment allowed others to misinterpret their kindness, leading to outcomes far removed from the giver's original intentions. But the impact of imbalanced kindness isn't limited to individuals. It can ripple out into larger social dynamics. Imagine a community volunteer who dedicates every weekend to organizing events, managing tasks, and addressing the needs of their neighbors. At first, their efforts galvanize the community, sparking gratitude and participation. Yet, as time goes on, the same people who once praised their work begin to assume they'll always handle the heavy lifting. Fewer volunteers step up, and the burden increasingly falls on the shoulders of this one person. Their kindness, though abundant, becomes a magnet for over-reliance, leaving them overwhelmed and unappreciated. These examples underscore the importance of boundaries, not as barriers to kindness but as frameworks that preserve its integrity. The diligent employee could regain balance by learning to say, "I can't take this on right now, but I'd be happy to assist another time." The parent might teach their child the value of patience and responsibility by occasionally declining a request, fostering mutual respect in the process. The community volunteer could share responsibilities, inviting others to contribute and ensuring their efforts remain a source of connection rather than a drain on their energy. Boundaries, when set with intention and love, do not diminish kindness, they enhance it. They signal to others that your generosity is a choice, not an obligation, and that it comes from a place of abundance rather than depletion. In doing so, boundaries protect the giver and elevate the value of their actions, ensuring kindness remains a force for harmony rather than imbalance. Another powerful illustration comes from relationships. Picture a friend who is always there for others, offering a listening ear, words of encouragement, and unwavering support. They are the person everyone turns to in times of need. Yet, when they themselves are struggling, they find no one is available to listen. Their role as the giver has become so ingrained that others forget they, too, might need kindness in return. The friend's generosity, though genuine, has created an unspoken dynamic where their needs are overlooked. This imbalance isn't born of malice but rather from a lack of communication and boundaries. In relationships like this, the power of boundaries becomes evident. By expressing their own needs and setting limits on their availability, the friend can reshape the dynamic. They teach others that kindness is reciprocal, fostering deeper, more balanced connections. The act of setting boundaries doesn't make them less kind, it ensures their kindness is valued and sustainable. The same principles apply in professional settings. Consider a manager who always takes on additional tasks to shield their team from stress. Their actions come from a place of care. But over time, their team becomes less proactive, relying on the manager to solve every problem. The manager's well-intentioned kindness inadvertently stifles the growth of their team, creating dependency rather than empowerment. By setting boundaries and encouraging their team to take ownership, the manager can transform their kindness into a tool for mutual growth. These stories remind us that kindness, when paired with wisdom, becomes a source of strength. Boundaries are not about withholding generosity but about guiding it in a way that uplifts everyone involved. They ensure that kindness remains a gift, not a duty, and that it fosters respect and balance rather than dependence or entitlement. In every aspect of life, from personal relationships to professional environments, the lessons of the river and the forest hold true. Kindness is most powerful when it flows with purpose, guided by the banks of discernment and self-respect. By embracing this balance, we not only protect our own well-being but also elevate the impact of our actions, inspiring others to engage with kindness in ways that are meaningful and sustainable. To integrate the lessons of kindness, wisdom, and boundaries into our lives, we must begin by shifting our perspective. Kindness is often portrayed as a simple, one-dimensional virtue: you give, others receive, and harmony ensues. But as we've seen through the disciples' journey and the story of the river, kindness is far more complex. It is a dynamic exchange that requires mindfulness, discernment, and, most importantly, balance. By grounding our actions in intention and awareness, we can transform kindness from a reactive habit into a purposeful force for good. Let's explore how these principles come to life in our everyday choices. The first step in practicing intentional kindness is learning to pause and reflect. In a world that often equates busyness with value, it can feel counterintuitive to take a moment of stillness before responding to someone's need. Yet, this pause is crucial. It creates space to ask yourself a simple but profound question. Is this kindness coming from a place of compassion or fear? True kindness arises from abundance, a genuine desire to uplift others. But sometimes, our acts of generosity are driven by a fear of rejection or a need for approval. We say yes not because we truly want to help, but because we're afraid of disappointing someone or being seen as unkind. By reflecting on the motivation behind your actions, you can ensure your kindness is authentic. This doesn't mean you should second-guess every decision or analyze every gesture. Instead, it's about cultivating a habit of mindfulness. When you take a moment to align your actions with your values, your kindness becomes more intentional and meaningful. It's no longer about fulfilling an obligation or meeting someone else's expectations. It's about giving from a place of integrity. As you become more mindful in your kindness, the importance of setting boundaries becomes clear. Boundaries are often misunderstood as barriers, something that separates us from others. But in reality, boundaries are acts of love, both for yourself and for those around you. They communicate that your kindness is a choice, not an obligation, and that your well-being matters just as much as the needs of others. Setting a boundary can be as simple as saying, "I'd love to help, but I don't have the capacity right now." It's a statement of self-respect, not selfishness. Saying no can feel uncomfortable, especially if you're used to prioritizing others over yourself. You might worry that people will see you as uncaring or that relationships will suffer. But the opposite is often true. When you set boundaries with kindness and clarity, you teach others to value your generosity rather than take it for granted. You also create space for healthier, more balanced interactions. Relationships built on mutual respect and understanding are far more sustainable than those based on unspoken resentment or exhaustion. Practicing compassion without attachment is another transformative step in applying these lessons. We live in a world that often treats kindness as transactional, an exchange where generosity is given with the expectation of gratitude, recognition, or reciprocation. But true kindness is free of these strings. It's an offering, not a negotiation. This doesn't mean you shouldn't feel appreciated or that it's wrong to hope your kindness is met with respect. It simply means letting go of the need for a specific outcome. When you practice compassion without attachment, your kindness becomes lighter and freer. You're no longer weighed down by disappointment if your efforts aren't acknowledged. Instead, your actions are rooted in the joy of giving itself. This mindset shift can be incredibly liberating. It allows you to focus on what you can control, your intentions, rather than what you can't, like someone else's response. It also protects your peace, ensuring that your kindness doesn't lead to bitterness or regret. To sustain this kind of generosity, it's essential to balance giving and receiving. Many people view self-care as indulgent or selfish, especially when they're surrounded by others who need help. But just as a river must replenish its waters to continue flowing, you must nurture your own well-being to remain a source of support for others. This balance isn't about keeping score or limiting your kindness, it's about recognizing that you can't pour from an empty cup. Self-care can take many forms, from carving out time for rest and reflection to seeking support from others when you need it. It's about honoring your limits and acknowledging that you, too, are deserving of care and compassion. When you prioritize your own well-being, you're not only preserving your ability to help others but also setting an example of healthy boundaries. You show those around you that kindness includes taking care of yourself, not just giving endlessly to others. Finally, embodying both strength and softness is key to practicing balanced kindness. Kindness, like water, is most powerful when it flows with both adaptability and intention. Softness allows you to connect with others, to offer empathy and understanding. Strength, on the other hand, gives your kindness direction and purpose. It ensures that your generosity is guided by wisdom, protecting you from exploitation and imbalance. To embody this balance, consider how you respond to challenges. When someone makes an unreasonable demand, can you say no with grace, acknowledging their needs without compromising your own? When a situation tests your patience, can you remain gentle while standing firm in your principles? This harmony between strength and softness is the essence of mindful kindness. It's what allows you to give freely without losing yourself in the process. These practices, pausing to reflect. Setting boundaries. Letting go of attachment. Balancing giving and receiving. And embodying strength and softness are not quick fixes or one-size-fits-all solutions. They require ongoing effort and self-awareness. But over time, they can transform the way you approach kindness, turning it into a source of empowerment rather than depletion. Imagine the ripple effects of this transformation. When your kindness is intentional and balanced, it not only uplifts those you help but also inspires others to approach generosity with the same care and mindfulness. Your actions become a model of how kindness can be both compassionate and discerning, both selfless and self-respecting. As you integrate these lessons into your life, remember that the journey is just as important as the destination. There will be moments of doubt and discomfort, times when it feels easier to revert to old habits. But with each mindful choice, you'll grow closer to embodying the kind of kindness that truly makes a difference, kindness that flows like a river, nourishing without depleting, uplifting without overwhelming. It's a kindness that honors both your own humanity and the humanity of those around you, creating harmony in every interaction. The disciple's journey is a testament to the transformative power of self-awareness. At the start, his kindness was pure and abundant, yet it lacked the structure to sustain itself. He gave freely, believing that endless generosity was the highest form of compassion. But as time passed, he discovered that unchecked kindness, though well-intentioned, could lead to imbalance, exploitation, and a deep sense of exhaustion. Through his master's guidance, he began to see kindness not as an infinite wellspring but as a flowing river, something to be guided and protected, lest it run dry. This shift in perspective marked the beginning of his transformation. The key to this change was understanding that boundaries are not barriers, they are bridges to respect and mutual understanding. For the disciple, this realization was both empowering and humbling. He had always equated saying yes with being kind and saying no with being selfish. But the master's wisdom taught him otherwise. Kindness without limits, he learned, is not sustainable. It can diminish the giver, create dependency in the receiver, and ultimately erode the very harmony it seeks to build. By setting boundaries, the disciple found that his kindness became more intentional and impactful, fostering genuine respect rather than passive reliance. This transformation did not happen overnight. It required the disciple to confront uncomfortable truths about himself and his relationships. He had to acknowledge that part of his unchecked kindness stemmed from a desire to be liked and valued by others. He realized that his self-worth had become entangled with the praise and approval of those around him. This was a painful realization, but it was also liberating. By disentangling his sense of self from external validation, he began to cultivate an inner strength that no longer depended on others' opinions. As the disciple practiced balancing compassion with wisdom, he noticed a profound change not only in how others treated him but also in how he treated himself. He no longer felt the need to overextend himself to prove his worth. He learned to say no with grace, understanding that declining a request did not make him less kind or compassionate. In fact, it made his kindness more authentic. By honoring his own limits, he was able to give from a place of abundance rather than depletion. This shift allowed him to approach his relationships with renewed energy and clarity, creating interactions that were more meaningful and harmonious. This journey of transformation reminds us that kindness is not diminished by boundaries, it is strengthened by them. When we set limits, we create space for our kindness to thrive, free from resentment or obligation. This is a lesson that resonates deeply in our own lives. How often do we say yes when we really mean no, driven by a fear of disappointing others or appearing unkind? How often do we give beyond our capacity, only to feel drained and unappreciated? The disciple's story encourages us to break free from these patterns and to embrace a kindness that is rooted in self-awareness and respect. This kind of transformation is not just about saying no, it's about saying yes to the things that truly matter. It's about prioritizing your own well-being so that you can show up fully for others. Imagine the ripple effects of this approach. When your kindness flows from a place of balance, it inspires others to do the same. It teaches them that generosity is most powerful when it is guided by wisdom and grounded in self-respect. This is the kind of kindness that builds bridges, nurtures growth, and fosters true connection. The disciple's journey also highlights the importance of self-compassion. As he reflected on his past actions, he realized that he had been kinder to others than he had been to himself. He had neglected his own needs, believing that self-sacrifice was the highest expression of love. But through the Master's teachings, he came to understand that self-compassion is not selfish, it is essential. By caring for himself, he was better able to care for others. This was not an easy lesson to learn, but it was a vital one. It reminded him that he, too, was deserving of the kindness he so freely gave to others. As we reflect on the disciple's transformation, we are reminded that kindness, when paired with self-awareness, becomes a powerful force for growth and harmony. It uplifts not only the receiver but also the giver, creating a cycle of mutual respect and understanding. This is the essence of true compassion, an act that nourishes all parties involved. The Master's words about the river and the forest linger as a profound metaphor for life. Just as the river must protect its flow to sustain the forest, we must protect our energy to sustain our ability to give. This is not an act of selfishness, it is an act of stewardship. When we care for ourselves, we ensure that our kindness remains a source of strength rather than a source of depletion. In the end, the disciple's journey is a mirror for our own. It challenges us to examine our motivations, to set boundaries with love, and to practice kindness that is both intentional and sustainable. It invites us to redefine what it means to be kind, not as a limitless giver but as a mindful steward of our own energy and compassion. Through this practice, we can transform kindness from a fleeting act into a lasting legacy, one that enriches our lives and the lives of those around us. This is the true power of kindness, when it is balanced with wisdom and rooted in self-respect. It becomes a force that harmonizes, uplifts, and inspires. As the Master's words echo in our minds, they leave us with a profound truth. Kindness, like the bending tree, is at its strongest when it adapts to the winds of life while staying firmly rooted in self-respect and wisdom. It's a balance that allows us to remain flexible and open-hearted without compromising the core of who we are. This balance transforms kindness from a simple virtue into a powerful force for harmony, one that nurtures not only those we care for but also ourselves. When we embrace this perspective, kindness becomes more than just an act, it becomes a way of being. It invites us to engage with the world authentically, giving freely but with discernment, setting boundaries with love, and finding joy in the connections we create. It's not about perfection or self-sacrifice, it's about living with intention and clarity. In this way, kindness becomes a gift that keeps giving, enriching our lives and the lives of those around us in ways we may never fully see or understand. Think about the moments in your life when you've experienced kindness, both as a giver and a receiver. These moments, no matter how small, have likely left a lasting impression. Maybe it was a word of encouragement when you needed it most. Or perhaps it was the quiet act of someone who saw your struggle and stepped in without being asked. These acts are reminders of the beauty of human connection, of the way kindness can bridge divides and lift spirits. They also remind us that the simplest gestures, when grounded in genuine care, have the power to ripple outward in unexpected and meaningful ways. As you reflect on these ideas, I encourage you to take a moment to think about how you can bring this balanced kindness into your own life. Perhaps it's through setting a boundary that allows you to give more fully when you choose to. Maybe it's by pausing to ensure your actions align with your values. or simply by being kinder to yourself in the process. Whatever form it takes, know that your kindness matters, and that its impact often extends further than you realize. If this message resonates with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever struggled with finding balance in your kindness? Or experienced a moment where setting boundaries transformed a relationship for the better? Share your story in the comments below. It might inspire someone else on their journey. And if you found this video insightful, consider sharing it with someone who could benefit from these lessons. Together, we can create a ripple effect of kindness and understanding. Thank you for taking the time to watch and engage with this video. Your presence here means more than you know, and I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to share these ideas with you. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you help us continue creating meaningful and thoughtful content. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when new videos are uploaded. Let me know in the comments what topics you'd like to see covered next. Whether it's more on kindness, mindfulness, or any other aspect of living a fulfilling life. Your feedback helps shape this space into something valuable for all of us. Until next time, take care, stay kind, and remember, true compassion begins with you. See you in the next video.